Sandy Hook School. Caller is indicating she thinks there's someone shooting in the building. Units responding to Sandy Hook School. The front glass has been broken out of the school. They're unsure why. At all units, the individual that I have on the phone is continuing to hear what he believes to be gunfire. The units responding to Sandy Hook School at this time, the shooting appears to have stopped. It is silent at this time. The school is in lockdown. I have reports that the teachers saw two shadows running past the building, past the gym, which would be rear.
Okay, these units in the school, I got bodies here. Let's get ambulance in there.
There will be, unfortunately, many more audio recordings like that tell such a dramatic story about what was happening when those police officers walked into that scene of carnage.
At all units, the individual that I have on the phone is continuing to hear what he believes to be gunfire.
Roger.
I have reports that the teachers saw two shadows running past the building, past the gym, which would be rear. Units are responding to Sandy Hook School. The front glass has been broken out of the school. They're unsure why. Caller is indicating she thinks there's someone shooting in the building. What I have on the phone is continuing to hear what he believes to be gunfire. We have one now in room 1 who has received a shot wound to the foot. Uncertain of any other injuries. I advise for ambulance.
I mean, I think right now, as he's kind of, like the governor said, setting the tone, I mean, he's got a lot on his plate and he's got to deal with. Yes, sir.
Forgive me for interrupting, but the president's out now in the East Room there. Let's take a listen.
Good morning. I thought it might make sense to take some questions this week as my first term comes to an end. It's been a busy and productive 4 years, and I expect the same for the next 4 years. I intend to carry out the agenda that I campaigned on.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the issue of guns, given how difficult it will be, some would say impossible, to get any gun control measure passed through this Congress, what are you willing or able to do using the powers of your presidency to act without Congress? And I'd also like to know, what do you make of these long lines we're seeing at gun shows and gun stores all around the country? I mean, even in Connecticut, applications for guns are up since the shooting in Newtown.
Well, my understanding is the Vice President's going to provide a range of steps that we can take to reduce gun violence. Some of them will require legislation, some of them I can accomplish through executive action. But I'm confident that there are some steps that we can take that don't require legislation and that are within my authority as president. Where you get a step that has the opportunity to reduce the possibility of gun violence, then I want to go ahead and take it. I think, for example, how we are gathering data, for example, on guns that fall into the hands of criminals.
President Obama's Watergate is how some critics are describing the growing controversy over the Fast and Furious gun walking program. House Oversight Committee Chairman Darrell Issa, wants Attorney General Eric Holder to appear before his committee early next year. Issa says that hearing will focus on what Justice Department officials should have done to stop the program. Operation Fast and Furious began in 2009 and allowed illegally purchased guns to walk from Arizona gun stores over the border to the Mexican drug cartels. The program was meant to monitor the flow of weapons, but it went very badly haywire. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of guns still missing. They've been linked to the deaths of hundreds of Mexicans along the U.S. border and also the death of a U.S. Border Patrol agent, Brian Terry. In light of the botched operation and what some see as the Justice Department's botched response, dozens of leaders are calling for Eric Holder to resign. More than 75 members of the House have signed a resolution expressing no confidence in his leadership. Washington Times columnist Jeffrey Kuhner suggests that scandal is President Obama's Watergate. He writes there's been systematic cover-up and that Eric Holder and his aides are guilty of high crimes, including perjury, obstruction of justice, and abuse of power. Kuhner believes that that is worse than Watergate because nobody died during the scandal that brought down President Nixon. For his part, Eric Holder says he's not going anywhere. In testimony before the Judiciary Committee earlier this month, Holder acknowledged that mistakes were made, but said he's not going to resign. He also said he doesn't think any of his top aides ought to step down. Holder played the race card in an interview with the New York Times. He said some of his critics are motivated by racism because he and President Obama are black. Here's the question. Could Fast and Furious eventually become President Obama's Watergate?
As far as people lining up and purchasing more guns, I think that we've seen for some time now that those who oppose any common sense gun control or gun safety measures have a pretty effective way of ginning up fear on the part of gun owners that somehow the federal government's about to take all your guns away.
When y'all go home and you're talking to your buddies and they say, he wants to take my gun away. You've heard it here. I'm on television, so everybody knows it. I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in people's lawful right to bear arms. I will not take your shotgun away.
These are a few of the 23 executive actions that I'm announcing today.
I will not take your rifle away.
These are a few of the 23 executive actions that I'm announcing today.
I won't take your handgun away.
These are a few of the 23 executive actions.
Executive action.
And yet, that doesn't mean any of this is going to be easy to enact or implement. This will be difficult. There will be pundits and politicians and special interest lobbyists publicly warning of a tyrannical, all-out assault on liberty.
Adolf Hitler is recognized as one of the most feared men in the history of the world. His legacy of genocide and usurpation of political power has been studied by many. How did someone so inconceivably cruel and evil rise to power? What can history tell us about the mistakes that were made that allowed a man like Hitler to go unnoticed for such a long period of time before costing millions of people their lives? Hitler's supremacist and racially motivated policies resulted in the deaths of an estimated 50 million people during World War II, including 6 million Jews and 5 million non-Aryans, whose systematic extermination was ordered by him and his close subordinates. How was this allowed to happen? Is history repeating itself now? And is it too far-fetched to liken the current President of the United States, President Barack Obama, to such a widely feared and reviled historical figure? In many ways, America seems to be making the same mistakes that Germany did prior to the outbreak of World War II. Economic depression and general instability helped fuel the fire to Hitler's rise to power. Inch by inch, Hitler brought tyranny to Germany, and once Führer, few had the courage to question his leadership or authority. At that point, it was too late, and those that surrounded him were encouraged not to think, but to take orders. Hitler's enemies were propagandized as a lower rung of human, and it made the extermination of them that much easier. They were treated like dogs, needing to be euthanized. Before becoming Führer, on the night of January 30th, 1933, the Nazis organized a massive torchlight parade in Berlin to celebrate the appointment of Adolf Hitler as Chancellor of Germany. Powerful German industrialists and businessmen had helped position Hitler for his rise to Führer. Just 1 month later, after Hitler's appointment to Chancellor in February of that year, Hitler set fire to the German parliament building called the Reichstag and blamed it on a communist plot. Not long after the incident, and at Hitler's urging, the German president at the time, President Paul von Hindenburg, caved to the mounting political pressure stemming from Hitler's powerful political allies and responded with the Reichstag fire decree, which suspended basic rights and allowed indefinite detention without trial of all German citizens. Activities of the German Communist Party were then since suppressed, and some 4,000 Communist Party members arrested. Since taking office in 2008, on the promise of hope and change, President Barack Obama has launched an aggressive assault on America's liberty. He has armed America's enemies through Benghazi, violating his oath of office by sending monies and weapons of war to insurgents in Syria led by al-Qaeda terrorists. He has violated federal law by overseeing a cover-up surrounding Attorney General Eric Holder's Operation Fast and Furious and the running of guns to Mexican drug cartels. He has lied to the American people by overseeing a cover-up of the September 11th Benghazi terror attack in Libya, which led directly to the deaths of 4 American citizens. He has bypassed Congress using executive order prior to the attack on Libya, insisting that congressional approval was not necessary. He has signed into law the National Defense Authorization Act, which includes provisions that permit the abduction and military detention without trial of all U.S. citizens, violating habeas corpus and Americans' right to a fair trial. And on January 16, 2013, surrounded by children to play to Americans' emotions, he has signed 23 different executive orders for broader gun control in the United States.
Now to a story that critics say is already a foreign policy scandal.
I think it is explained explicitly because of what's happened over the last several weeks with Libya and Egypt, and in 30 other capitals where our embassies have been targeted for attack.
I believe that much of this will come back to weapons, and the movement of weapons out of Libya to Turkey and then into Syria.
Let's just get blunt. No way to sugarcoat this. We've been lied to.
And what the United States knew about the movement of those weapons and whether it did anything to stop the movement of those weapons. I have one piece of data that says Ambassador Stevens was in Benghazi on 9/11 to negotiate a weapons transfer.
We've flat out been lied to. They know they've lied. It's as if airplanes crashing into the World Trade Center and somebody says those were just accidents, the planes veered off course. Everybody with 2 eyes and IQ above plant life understands that what happened in Egypt and what happened in Libya was not some spontaneous reaction to a stupid 13-minute video on YouTube. It was a planned, coordinated, orchestrated attack led by terrorists. Terrorist bill. And this White House has to explain why it hasn't owned up to that, why it can't say it. And I think, frankly, if this issue really gets the traction that it deserves, and let me say that it deserves, let's go back. Richard Nixon was forced out of office because he lied and because he covered some stuff up. I'm going to be blunt and tell you this. Nobody died in Watergate. We have some people who are dead because of this, and there's some questions to be answered, and Americans ought to demand to get answers.
On September 11, 2001, the United States suffered the largest domestic terrorist attack in the history of America. Approximately 1 month later, on October 26th, the Patriot Act was signed into law by President George W. Bush. The Patriot Act specifically expanded Washington's definition of terrorism to include domestic terrorism, thus enlarging the number of activities to which the Patriot Act's expanded law enforcement powers could be applied. The response to September 11th also led to the formation of the TSA and the Department of Homeland Security. On December 31, 2011, President Barack Obama signed into law the National Defense Authorization Act, better known as the NDAA. The detention sections of the NDAA give President Barack Obama absolute power to indefinitely detain anyone they suspect to be a terrorist, via the armed forces, any person, including U.S. citizens, without trial. President Obama is now enacting sweeping gun control legislation in order to protect our children, which he says is America's #1 priority, from violent massacres like Sandy Hook. So what can history tell us about gun control, and what can we learn from it? In 1911, Turkey established gun control. From 1915 to 1917, 1.5 million Armenians, unable to defend themselves, were rounded up and exterminated. Germany established gun control in 1938, and from 1939 to 1945, leaving the German people unable to defend themselves against the Gestapo and SS, millions of people were exterminated. China established gun control in 1935. From 1948 to 1952, 20 million political dissidents, unable to defend themselves, were rounded up and exterminated. Guatemala established gun control in 1964. From 1964 to 1981, 100,000 Mayan Indians, unable to defend themselves, were rounded up and exterminated. Uganda established gun control in 1970. From 1971 to 1979, 300,000 Christians, unable to defend themselves, were rounded up and exterminated. The total exterminated is said to be between 2 to 3 million people. Cambodia established gun control in 1956. From 1975 to 1977, 1 to 2 million well-educated people, unable to defend themselves, were rounded up and exterminated. These are just a few historical examples of mass genocide, and there are many, too many to count. The total amount of people rounded up and exterminated in the 20th century alone because of gun control is estimated to be at least 56 million people at a bare minimum. These are astonishing figures, and they're hard to argue with. Gun control, using history as our guide, has a very high correlation with the extermination and genocide of a defenseless and unarmed population. So what is the purpose of gun control in the United States, and will it actually reduce violent crime? Let's take a closer look at recent history. John Howard, who served as Prime Minister of Australia from 1996 to 2007, imposed sweeping gun control legislation in the late 1990s. The first legislation passed in 1996 in response to a massacre in Tasmania that left over 35 people dead. 26 people comparatively died at Sandy Hook. The law specifically banned semi-automatic and automatic rifles and shotguns. It also instituted a mandatory buyback program for newly banned weapons. So what happened, and did violent crime actually decline? In total, gun owners in Australia were forced to surrender over 640,000 personal firearms to be destroyed by the Australian government, a program costing Australian taxpayers more than $500 million. These were the first-year results. Australia-wide, violent homicides increased 3.2%. Violent assaults increased 8.6%. Armed robberies increased 44%. Yes, 44%. These are just a few examples. Does this look like a decrease in violent crime to you? Obama continues to use the argument that gun violence and homicide is on the rise in America, especially compared to other countries around the world with stricter gun laws. Is this true? According to the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Uniform Crime Report, As far back as 1992, the United States had a violent crime rate of 757.7 per 100,000 people, and a murder rate of 9.3 per 100,000. Jumping ahead to 2011, the latest reported crime period, the FBI reported a violent crime rate of 386.3 per 100,000 people, and a murder rate of 4.7 per 100,000. That's a 50% decrease in the violent crime rate in the United States compared to 1992, and a 54% decrease in the murder rate. That's a fact, not an opinion. Also notice how the violent crime rate and murder rate have both declined steadily almost every year since 1992. So if the violent crime rate and murder rate in America are actually on the decline, as the data clearly shows, then what is the political agenda behind President Obama's 23 executive orders for stricter gun control if the data proves otherwise?
Well, look, we are vigilant and constantly monitoring. And I think that the men and women in our intelligence agencies, as well as the FBI, have done a terrific job, and the Department of Homeland Security. The biggest concern we have right now is not the launching of a major terrorist operation, although that risk is always there. The risk that we're especially concerned of right now is the lone wolf terrorist, somebody with a single weapon. So we're spending a lot of time monitoring and gathering information.
So what I hear you saying is we don't have to worry about a spectacular 9/11 kind of event. More like a lone wolf could do some damage, right, kill a lot of people.
The most likely scenario that we have to guard against right now ends up being more of a lone wolf operation.
Commonly reported by the mainstream media is that the United States is far more dangerous than countries with stricter gun laws such as Great Britain. Even with the tragic shootings at Sandy Hook and Aurora, Colorado, this is also not true. According to the Home Office Statistical Bulletin, which provides comparable statistics to the FBI crime rates for England and Wales, in 2011, England and Wales had a violent crime rate of 762,000 violent crime offenses. With a total England-Wales population of 56 million, that is a ratio of 1,361 violent crimes per 100,000 people. This is 3.5 times the violent crime rate in the United States. Now, England and Wales does have a murder rate of 1.3, which is slightly lower than the United States, but the violent crime rate is 3.5 times that of the US. Again, this isn't exactly what you're hearing from the liberal mainstream media. This isn't rocket science. It appears that violent crime and murder rates are declining in America. They have been, according to the data, since 1992. And America, compared to other countries such as Great Britain with stricter gun control, has a lower violent crime rate. So what gives? Why are Obama and his representatives attacking Americans' right to self-defense and the Second Amendment under the guise that it will reduce gun-related violence and crime, when we just discovered that it does none of those things? As the data clearly shows, violent crime actually goes up after broader gun control. Why? One of the reasons violent crime increases with stricter gun control is that law-abiding citizens turn in their guns and obey the law, but criminals do not. Criminals keep their guns, and this leaves law-abiding citizens unarmed and virtually defenseless. A modern example of this phenomenon is a situation we have in Mexico, with powerful and well-armed drug cartels influencing corrupt government officials, while the Mexican citizens are disarmed and left completely defenseless. Stricter gun control actually leads to more corruption and empowers criminals. There is no check and balance because the average citizen is disarmed. It is one of the reasons parts of Mexico are some of the most violent and dangerous in the world. Knowing all of this, and after stating the obvious, if the president really cared about our children, then why would he be putting our children at risk by disarming them instead of protecting them? Did he not say in a recent speech that protecting the children in America is the country's #1 priority? Well, what exactly are President Barack Obama's motives? Could there perhaps be another reason for America's disarmament? A hidden political agenda behind the president's executive orders for stricter gun control? At present, all 50 states in the United States have signed petitions with the White House to peacefully secede from the Union. More than 125,000 people in Texas, for example, have already signed this petition. Nearly 700,000 people throughout all 50 states have signed secession petitions since President Barack Obama was re-elected to a second term. This is no joke, but a fact. States like Texas are in the process of seceding from the United States, and if things don't change in America soon, other states will surely follow. President Barack Obama's 23 executive orders for stricter gun control seem to only be adding more fuel to the fire. Are the people signing these petitions for secession part of a fringe group of tinfoil hat-wearing, right-wing religious lunatics? Or do they know something that the vast majority of Americans don't? In Texas, for example, a prominent lawmaker has already threatened to arrest any American official who enforces, quote, King Obama gun laws. Republican Rep. Steve Toth has indicated that his Firearms Protection Act will make trying to enforce a federal gun ban in the state of Texas subject to a $50,000 fine and up to 5 years in prison. This is a very stiff penalty for simply enforcing the 23 executive orders President Barack Obama is enacting in order to protect our children. So